Put your hands up. Show me your hands.
People say, well, James, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. But I made a call. I made the call because I thought that they were going to do what I called them to do, check on my neighbor. And they didn't do that.
On a cool autumn night in Fort Worth, Texas, the air was filled with an uneasy calm. Atatiana Jefferson, a bright and compassionate 28-year-old woman, was spending time with her 8-year-old nephew Zion at their home on East Allen Avenue. As the night deepened, they immersed themselves in a late-night video game session, unaware that their lives were about to be forever changed. Across the street, a neighbor noticed something unusual. The front door of Jefferson's home was ajar. Concerned for her safety but not wanting to alarm anyone, he made a fateful decision. He dialed the non-emergency police line, explaining that the door was open and requested a welfare check. It was a seemingly benign call, one meant to ensure that everything was all right. Little did he know, this call would set off a chain of events leading to tragedy. Just before 2:30 a.m., Officer Aaron Dean and his partner responded to the call. As they arrived, the darkness enveloped the neighborhood, broken only by the beams of their flashlights. The officers moved quietly around the side of the house, opting not to announce their presence. This decision, made in the silent tension of the night, would have deadly consequences. As the officers approached the back of the house, Dean peered through a window. Inside, Jefferson had noticed noises outside and, fearing for her safety, retrieved her legally owned handgun. Holding it at her side, she approached the window to investigate. Suddenly, Dean shouted, "Put your hands up, show me your hands."
Put your hands up. Show me your hands.
Before Jefferson could comprehend the command, a single shot rang out, shattering the window and striking her. She fell to the floor, lifeless. The body camera footage later revealed the shocking speed of the encounter. Dean had fired within seconds of seeing Jefferson. There was no indication that the officers had identified themselves or given Jefferson a chance to respond. The reflection of Dean's flashlight on the window made it unclear whether he could see the gun she held. Chaos ensued as the officers entered the home. Zion, witnessing the horrifying scene, was left traumatized. The officers attempted to provide emergency medical care, but it was too late. At 3:05 a.m., Jefferson was pronounced dead at the scene. Her death sent shockwaves through her family and the community. Although police found a handheld pistol near Atatiana's body, her 8-year-old nephew, who witnessed the entire incident, insists his aunt was not pointing it toward the window when the shot took her down. It appears she had stopped playing video games with her nephew to investigate the figure in flashlight creeping around her home in her yard. The neighbor who called was distraught after the incident. After all, he was simply asking for a welfare check. He never said he saw any danger. All he wanted was for someone to come out and check on his neighbor. Next thing he knew, his call had led to a white cop coming into his black neighborhood and killing his young black neighbor. All he wanted was to keep her safe, and now she was gone forever.
People say, well, James, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. But I made a call. I made the call because I thought that they were going to do what I called them to do, check on my neighbor. And they didn't do that.
Atatiana Jefferson was more than just a victim. She was a vibrant, intelligent woman with dreams and aspirations. Born on November 28, 1990, she had graduated from Xavier University of Louisiana in 2014 with a degree in biology and was pursuing a career in medicine. She had moved into her mother's house to care for her and Zion. Jefferson worked in human resources and was known for her kindness and dedication to her family. Officer Aaron Dean, the man who fired the fatal shot, had joined the Fort Worth Police Department in April 2018. His brief tenure was marred by mixed evaluations. His training records noted his tendency for tunnel vision and a need for better communication with the public. Despite these concerns, his most recent performance review had been positive. However, a deeper look into his past revealed troubling signs. In 2004, while at the University of Texas at Arlington, Dean had been cited for assault by contact for touching a woman's breast in a library. He had pled no contest and paid a fine, but this incident was brought up during his job interview with the Fort Worth Police. Chief of Police Ed Kraus quickly identified Dean as the shooter.
Had the officer not resigned, I would have fired him for violations of several policies, including our use of force policy.
Dean resigned from the department before he could be fired, a move that spared him from a dishonorable discharge. His refusal to cooperate with the investigation only fueled public outrage. The community demanded answers, and the call for justice grew louder.
Justice for Atatiana Jefferson! No lives matter until Black Lives Matter!
Manny Ramirez, the president of the Fort Worth Police Officers Association, stood before the press, visibly shaken. Dean had never been the subject of a police investigation, he asserted. His words hung in the air, laden with the weight of disbelief and confusion that permeated the department. Interim Police Chief Ed Kraus was equally perplexed. In a somber press conference, Kraus revealed that Dean had refused to cooperate with the investigation. He had not given an oral or written statement, nor had he allowed Kraus to question him. The silence from Dean was deafening, fueling suspicion and anger within the community. Ramirez's voice trembled as he continued, "We are dumbfounded as to why Dean would have fired his weapon in this situation. There is no way to explain his actions." The officers who knew Dean were baffled, unable to reconcile the man they thought they knew with the one who had pulled the trigger that night. The turning point came when investigators reviewed the footage from Dean's body camera. The video, raw and unfiltered, captured every moment leading up to the fatal shot. It showed Dean's rapid escalation, his shouted commands, and the instantaneous gunshot that shattered the window and a family's sense of security. Based on this footage, the evidence was undeniable. A warrant was issued for Dean's arrest. On October 14, 2019, Dean was arrested and charged with murder.
Aaron Dean guilty of manslaughter in the shooting death of Atatiana Jefferson.
He posted a $200,000 bond and was released shortly after. The legal journey that followed was long and fraught with delays. Initially set for August 2021, Dean's trial faced multiple postponements due to the COVID-19 pandemic and various legal motions. Finally, on December 5, 2022, the trial began. The courtroom was packed with family members, community activists, and media. Testimonies painted a vivid picture of the night's events. Zion's account was particularly heart-wrenching. He described how he and his aunt had been playing video games, how they had opened the door to let smoke from burnt hamburgers escape.
We were just playing games, then we just heard the alarm going off, then we opened it, a whole bunch of smoke came out of the oven.
And were you cooking these in the kitchen?
Yes, sir.
So what'd you do after all the smoke came from burning the hamburger?
We opened up the...
And how his aunt had grabbed her gun when they heard noises outside.
And did you see her go to her purse and get that gun?
Yes, sir.
And what did she do after she took the gun out of her purse?
She just held it to her side.
Former Officer Dean couldn't get a break on this one. Even his partner, Officer Carol Darch, didn't have his back when she was called to testify, telling the jury that she had her back to the window when Dean began to yell out commands for Jefferson to put her hands up, she testified. Darch said she started to turn around, heard a gunshot, then looked over Dean's shoulder and could see a face in the window with eyes as big as saucers. Carol Darch testified she did not see Jefferson holding a gun and didn't recall Dean ever saying Jefferson had a gun. The prosecution argued that Dean had acted recklessly and without proper identification. The defense, however, claimed that Dean perceived a threat and acted in self-defense. After days of intense deliberation, the jury found Dean guilty of the lesser charge of manslaughter on December 15, 2022. On December 19, 2022, Dean was sentenced to 11 years, 10 months, and 12 days in prison.
Approximately 6 p.m., Aaron Dean was arrested for the murder of Miss Jefferson.
Verdict reads, we the jury, having found the defendant Aaron York Dean guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the offense of manslaughter, assess his punishment at confinement in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for 11 years, 10 months, 12 days. They do not assess a fine.
The sentence was met with mixed reactions. Some saw it as a step toward justice, while others felt it was insufficient for the loss of a promising young life. Dean was confined at the Lon Evans Correction Center in Fort Worth, later transferred to the Ramsey Unit in Rosheron, Texas. The death of Atatiana Jefferson ignited widespread outrage. Fort Worth Mayor Betsy Price promised a thorough investigation, while the NAACP condemned the shooting as unacceptable. The neighbor who had called for the welfare check expressed profound regret, stating he had never intended for such a tragic outcome. Jefferson's funeral was a poignant affair, attended by family, friends, and community members. Professional athletes Harrison Barnes and Malik Jackson covered the funeral expenses, and a GoFundMe campaign raised additional support for the family. Atatiana Jefferson's death left an indelible mark on Fort Worth and the nation. It underscored the urgent need for police reform and accountability. Her story became a symbol of the broader issues of racial injustice and the need for systemic change in law enforcement practices. Chief Ed Krause, reflecting on the erosion of public trust, compared it to an anthill being washed away by a hose, emphasizing the need to rebuild trust from scratch. For Jefferson's family, the pain of her loss endures, but her legacy continues to inspire calls for justice and reform.
Atatiana Jefferson was a bright, vibrant light.
The tragic night that took Atatiana Jefferson's life serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of systemic failures and the importance of justice. As her community and the nation grapple with the implications of her death, her story remains a powerful testament to the need for change and the enduring fight for a fair and just society.